Well, hello there, friends. Happy Wednesday. It's What If Wednesday, and I'm Mindy Odlin, and this is our time to come together and to share some ideas, some practical ideas for using this What If Up philosophy in your life, and a chance for us to connect. So, thanks for being here. It's great to connect with you every Wednesday at our new time. I'm here at noon these days, and today I wanted to bring bring to you a question that came up as I was out what if upping in the big wide world last week. I had an opportunity for the first time to bring what if upping into a government agency, and it was really interesting because uh, one, I was sort of wondering, like, what can we do within something that's a regulatory type of industry, and it was, I have to say, so much fun. It was amazing. The people were extraordinary. They got it. They were incredibly creative. And it really sort of opened my mind to, like, wow, what is possible with this work? So one of the questions that came out of that is my fodder for talk today. So the thing that I want to share with you today is around leadership. It's around influence, and it's around power and how we use our power. So whether you are, a mom, a parent, and you're leading your family, or you're a business owner and you're leading your team of contractors, or you're a nonprofit leader and you're leading your volunteers, or you're a corporate agency leading, a bunch of executives leading, a huge organization, or even a government agency and you've got, your government employees. Like, there's leadership that happens at every level. So that's what today is about. Today is a question that came up around how do you bring this process in? So if you're new to the What If Up process, it's about generating ideas, using the power of what if thinking, what if up thinking, to be able to look at the things you want to create and create possibility for moving forward. So thank you for joining. I'd love to hear who's here. So pop a comment into the chat and let me know what your wins are for the week, who's here, and maybe what are some areas where you have influence. Maybe it's in your family, maybe it's in your church, maybe it's in your office. What are your areas of influence? So here's the question that I got. This one gentleman, he said, this is really great. He was loving the experience. He's like, what do you recommend if you want to bring this type of thinking, this type of culture into an organization where maybe the leadership is a little more in that top-down hierarchy mode, not quite as open to having everyone generating ideas? So that was the gist of the question. Like, what do you do when leadership is not receptive, but everybody else really wants to do it? And I have found this a lot, and particularly I found it a lot in faith-based organizations, where sometimes the greatest resistance is not from the people that we're serving, because they're all on board and want to get engaged more and want to get connected more. But sometimes it's that leader at the top who has a hard time shifting into a new paradigm. The paradigm that has been passed down for many generations is this hierarchical top-down leadership model. And I will say, in a lot of organizations, including government organizations, ultimately the decision is going to rest with someone probably, in that upper C-suite, right? So, hey, Richard from Dallas, thanks for joining. It's great to have you here. So that was the question was, what do you do if you want to bring this kind of innovation, this kind of creativity, this kind of mindset into an organization where maybe the person in charge is not quite getting it? So this is about culture. One of the things I have found is that if you have a leader that is not open to bringing in something new and innovative, something that is that brings a surge of energy from the bottom up, it is very, very difficult. So my first tip is celebrate those leaders who have that openness, who have that insight to recognize that the old top-down model is an antiquated model, and that what's emerging is not the opposite of that, right? So we tend to pendulum swing and say, okay, either it's the leader that has all the power, or it's the employees, it's the people that have all the power. And where I find the greatest power is by focusing on what is your purpose, being purpose-driven. because when you're clear on what the purpose is of your organization, the purpose of your family, the purpose of your team, the purpose of your church, when you're clear on what the purpose is, then it's much, much easier for the leader to do the part that only the leaders can do, the executive leaders, and for those who are employees and leading their teams or leading in other ways, for them to be able to know what is their role and how can they contribute in that way. So this is about some tips that I have ascertained from being out in the field this week. First thing I would say is there's great value in practicing with the small things. So this methodology, this WhatIfUP thinking, is not something to bring in when all hell's breaking loose and you're trying to solve huge problems. It's something to bring in a celebratory way. It's something to bring in a positive, lighthearted way, and to give people a chance to practice the process with things that are smaller, with things that are perhaps personal, and building the connection first. Build the connection, build the trust, and practice the process. Because what we're actually doing as we practice WhatIfUpping is we're creating a neural pathway that is designed to be able to see a problem, an obstacle, or a goal, and then to be able to generate resourceful ideas for getting there. So that's step one, is just get people in the room and teach them how to do it in a way that feels good, where there's a positive anchor to that experience. So now they've got some practice. When something bigger comes up, their brain's already wired for it, right? You practice it. So I recommend have a team building day. And that's what we did, like a little 3-hour workshop, team building celebration. Here's how it works. Let's practice it. Practice it on anything that you want. No topic is off limits. So it can be personal stuff. It can be related to your team, whatever. Just practice it, learn it. The second thing I recommend is once you've got the process down, then to find ways to reinforce it and to reiterate it. So that might be ongoing lunch and learns. That could be breakfast meetings. That could be having team meetings that start with WhatIfUpping. So you want to teach the process and then reinforce the process by doing it on an ongoing basis. And that helps to incorporate it into the culture. So start small, be consistent, right? Be consistent. And then in any organization, there's always room. Somewhere there is room for creativity. There is room for innovation. So even if you're in an organization like, a government regulatory institution, I'm like, where is the room to create in here? Well, it turns out that when the culture is there, there's a lot of room for innovation. Innovation in terms of, how we show up in the public. How do we work together? How do we build relationships? How do we celebrate? How do we keep our culture as something that's engaging? You've probably heard about this too, about this whole movement of quiet quitting. And I look at that and I'm like, okay, well, why are people quiet quitting? Why is that happening? And to me, what it ties back into is this culture that we've created, this pervasive culture where we teach people that they have no power because it's all at the top. So when you teach people that they have no power, they will respond in a couple ways. One is just to say, okay, well, I can't influence this, so I'm just going to do the minimum. That's quiet quitting. Or they become subversive, and that becomes the toxic culture, the actively disengaged teammates who are not only not helping, but literally taking the ship down because of their toxic attitudes. But that toxic attitude is the result of something else that's going on. And I find that when people are empowered, when people know that they have a voice, when they are acknowledged, when they know their voice matters, they will engage at a different level. Why? Because it's getting reinforced in a positive way. There were some studies done decades ago. This was like way back before like the animal rights people had their say, but they did these studies, very cruel studies. This was like I think in the 50s, and they would bring dogs into a cage and shock them and not give them a way to get out of it. And then they would do the same experiment, but they would open the door so the dog would leave. But what they found is that once the dog had learned that there was no way out, it would just stay there and suffer versus finding a way to leave. And they call that learned helplessness. It's what happens when you're in a situation repeatedly and you have no power to do anything different. You learn, you adapt, you learn to be helpless or to quiet quit or to be subversive and try to find your power in whatever little crevice you can find your power. But what if instead organizations, families, teams, like what if instead there was a way where every person had a voice, where every person was a part of the solution, where you could bring a challenge, you could bring an intention, you could bring a goal, and together you could brainstorm ideas, brainstorm possibilities, and use those ideas, those possibilities that best fit for your intention. And you can do that as a leader, still holding the the role of captain. Every ship needs a captain, but the captain alone can't get anywhere without the crew that wants to row and get you where you're going, and trust. So tips are great. I would add, please don't tell the hierarchical leader this, that his paradigm is passing like death. He doesn't want to think about it. It's a threat to the ego. And that is the problem, isn't it? So let's what if up that, because I think he really nailed it. Like that is the challenge. What do you do with a hierarchical leader who has climbed their way to the top, many times worked very, very hard to be in that position? And in most situations, they deserve to be where they are. They've worked hard to get there. So what they've been taught is, now that you're in charge, now you have the power. That's why we want to climb up there. So we have the power. So what if this is a fundamental paradigm shift? What if the way to bring this type of process, where you're not just tapping into the resources of those on the top line, but you're actually mobilizing everybody on the ship, right? Everybody on the ship has a role to play, but how do you keep them engaged and wanting to fulfill that role? They need to know, like, why are they doing it and how is it contributing, and that their contribution makes a difference. So how do you do that when you have someone who has worked very hard to get into that top tier of that old model? And I think it's the paradigm shift of what this isn't, is it isn't anarchy. It isn't saying that you don't have power anymore. It isn't saying that you aren't still the ultimate decision maker. What it is saying is that there is an incredible amount of untapped potential within your organization. And the only way to tap into the full power of that is to create structures, infrastructures, where you can give people a voice, give people a way to share their ideas, to share their challenges, to share their goals, so that you know what they are, you know what those challenges are. And my belief, from what I've seen from my own experience, is that the solutions that most people are looking for, and I will do a blanket humanity, the solutions that we are looking for the biggest challenges, enormous challenges we face, it's within us. But how often do we sit down and put our focus on finding those solutions? How often do we look to our elected leaders and say, well, they need to change something? Well, what if we had ways for us to collectively, in small groups, to come together and to problem solve, to implement those solutions, to share best practices, and to create that change together? If we just all sit back and wait for those few people in power to make all the change, it's just not going to happen. It's just not possible. So this is a time of massive change, paradigm shifting. And that paradigm shift is not you have power or you don't have power. The paradigm shift is, what are we trying to create together? And what do we all have to bring to this? And what is my role in that change? And those that are in power are still in power, and they still make decisions, and they still are ultimately responsible for that bottom line, correct? But what if they knew that the best way for them to get to those results and to impact that bottom line and to help with retention and to help with recruitment and all those wonderful things that can take a company down or help them rise to the top? What if people knew that the way to really impact that bottom line is by taking care of people and providing a voice for them, providing a platform for them to use the gifts that they've been given, the wisdom they've been given, the experience, the imagination they've been given, to create the positive changes that we want to see? So that's the idea. That's the possibility. And if you have what ifs for this, pop them in the comments. What are your ideas, your possibilities? What if we could find a way to be purpose driven in everything that we do? And what if by being clear on what that purpose is, we pull to us, we attract to us others who have similar intentions? And what if in bringing those people together and sharing those ideas that we are able to do more than any of us could do on our own? What if that lonely leader paradigm morphs into something that is more holistic, that is healthier, and that supports every person at every level of an organization? What if you, Captain, see that the sailors are not mutineers, the miracle makers? What if the sailors on ship are your best buddies? And what if at the end of the day, you celebrate once you hit that distant shore? You celebrate what you do together and you acknowledge that no one on that ship would have gotten there without everyone on that ship, right? It takes all of us. So thank you for your ideas. Thank you for the possibilities. Thank you for sharing your what ifs. If you're watching this in the recordings, in the archives, I love watching your comments as well. So anytime you have a what if, pop it in here. And you know, we got a challenge for the week. Actually, we had a challenge last week as well. And I want to thank those of you who've been in our WhatIfUP community, who have been posting in response to that. I haven't gone in there to see who the winner is. But I'm going to do that today. So I'll post that in our community. I know we have people that have submitted, so I will draw a name today. And then as we move forward, we need a challenge for the week. You know, it actually didn't occur to me that like we need a challenge for this week. What could it be? I'm going to throw it out to you. What if this week our challenge is what if that challenge is to get clear on what our purpose is? What if that's really step one? So this week's challenge, all right, I'm going to throw it down. Share your purpose, share what it is you're trying to do. And it can be your purpose with your family, with your team, with your church, with your office mates. It can be your purpose as an organization, as an entrepreneur. Share your purpose. And in sharing that purpose, what if you attract the people who align with that purpose? And what if together we create extraordinary things? So there's the challenge for you. Thank you so much for being part of this What If Wednesday. I can't wait to see you next week. And in the meantime, keep what if upping, and I'll see you soon. Have a great week. Bye-bye.